Today, there are 2 million descendants of French-Canadian immigrants living in New England. These are our stories. Welcome to the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast.
Venez tous jeunes filles et garçons, je vais vous raconter l'histoire de notre immigration ici au USA, de grands aventuriers, de pays étrangers.
This is the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast. I am Jesse Martineau. Now this week, I am very excited to dedicate an entire episode to a project we have mentioned quite a few times on the podcast. Franco Foods is a terrific YouTube series done in association with the Franco-American Center here in Manchester, New Hampshire. And during this YouTube show, which is cool, you get to watch a particular dish being made while you get kind of like a cultural and language lesson at the same time. It is a very, very cool project. Already had a ton of success. And joining us now is the mother-son team behind this terrific YouTube show, Natalie and Oskar Hirte. Natalie and Oskar, welcome to the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast.
Hi. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Now, this is cool. So before we get going too much on Franco Foods, I want to get a little bit of your stories, kind of your background. So, Natalie, maybe give us a heads up. Where did you grow up and how did you become active in the Franco-American scene in New Hampshire?
Born and raised in Chateauguay on the southwest shore of Montreal, and that's very important for a Chateauguois to say. Very important. So I was there. I grew up there, and fast forward, went to University of Ottawa, where eventually I met my now husband, Thomas Hirte, and we were married in 1996, and a month after our wedding, we moved to the States. Yeah, fast forward again, 20 years later. Lots of fast forwarding. You know, we settled in New Hampshire, have 3 kids. Oscar's the middle child, the poor guy. And at one point, I was fortunate enough that I could be a stay-at-home mom. That's what I wanted to do, and I was able to do so. But there comes a point where I wanted to do something more, or not more, but something different outside as the kids needed me less, and started looking for a part-time job. And I found the Franco-American Center. And funny enough, the day I saw the ad on Craigslist was the deadline for the application process.
Awesome.
And that's how I got involved. I really didn't know much about the Franco-American scene at that point, and got a crash course in what it was to be a Franco-American in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I mean, did you even have any clue at all growing up where you were in Quebec that there were these organizations like the Franco-American Center here?
Nope, none whatsoever, which is great. Like podcasts such as yours, our channel, and all the social media has been a boon, I think, of recognition on the other side, on the border, like on the Canadian side, for people to realize that there's a thriving Franco community in the U.S., not just New England, which is, of course, a huge part of it, but
sure,
everywhere. And I think that's a wonderful thing for them to realize. And I think that's been very conducive to reconnection of the two countries and the culture, the French culture here and the French culture in Canada and Quebec.
Very cool. Now, Oskar, how about yourself? How familiar were you with any of this Franco stuff when you were growing up?
I was totally oblivious to the whole organization of it. And I mean, I only really, even once my mom got her job at the Franco-American Center, I only really started learning about it like a year or two afterwards, and started actually helping out at different events and taking pictures and stuff.
Yeah, well, he was in high school where we live in Litchfield. Sophomores and seniors need to do a project and do volunteer hours. His was volunteering at the Franco-American Center in his sophomore year.
No,
pulled him in.
No, that's very, very cool. Oskar, you run the production side of everything here. So how did you even get into film? Like, how did that even start?
So when I was in about 7th grade, I want to say, I saw a special effect of, it was in whatever movie it was, there's the actor that is like cloned. So there's 2 of him that you can see on the screen, and I was like blown away. So the first thing I ever tried to do was I tried to clone myself using special effects.
That's awesome.
And I mean,
I'm learning something here. I never heard that story before.
Oh yeah, that's right. I never actually showed you the video.
No, you never did.
Yeah. But,
so this still exists? This video exists of you twice?
I don't think it is. I think I think I like nuked my hard drive on my computer a few years back, and it disappeared into the void. So at this point, it's archaic knowledge.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So just self-taught from there? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of, if I didn't know how something worked, I would go onto YouTube and look up a tutorial on how to cut two pieces of film together and splice them together to look like one continuous shot, and just kind of keep going and researching until I can put a video together myself.
That is very, very cool. All right, Franco Foods. Where did the idea from Franco Foods come from?
Well, I guess originally, so, some people may remember something major happened in March 2020, and we were all stuck home.
Yeah, I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, you might have heard. So, being a nonprofit was John and I, my boss, who's the executive director, who you know well.
Yes.
We were talking about what could we do to engage our members and supporters, but also, especially with everything going on, something that was, quite frankly, was a free activity that people could do. And I was thinking, humming and hawing, and I thought, well, you know what? Everybody loves to cook, and right now everybody's going to want to cook. So I came up with a recipe swap, an online reso. Once a month, we did a Zoom meeting, and I changed the topic and whatnot, and we just did a recipe swap, and it was a lot of fun. And I think the best part of it wasn't so much the recipes, but people would start talking, oh, when I was a kid and my mom did, we all know culture, everything is so closely linked to food. So I started that in April of 2020. And then I knew as we were heading towards November, the holidays, I knew I pretty much maxed out what I could do with that. So I started talking with my family, and Oscar goes, Mom, YouTube channel. He goes, you love to cook. We could take the similar concept. So really at that point, the whole YouTube aspect, that's all Oscar. He's the one who really came up with the concept, and, a lot of batting back and forth. And then so we talked through the holidays, spent hours just sitting in front of the fireplace, coming up with ideas. And then suddenly, so what we did is we did a practice or a concept video to show John and then president of the FAC, Joe Terrio, shared it with them, and they loved the concept. And that's how we started. And we decided to have our first video in March. So at this point, we're in January 2021, and we decided we would launch it in March because of Francophony Month. So we figured it was a perfect slot to put it in. And that's how we started.
Very cool. Did you guys always know it was going to be called Franco Foods, or was that actually a discussion?
I think we pretty immediately agreed that Franco Foods would work, because that was the name of the food.
It was the recipe swap. Yeah. So
cool.
It was kind of already a known entity of our people who followed us, I guess. But Oscar found it flowed well. It was a catchy, easy title to remember.
No, that's cool.
Channel,
yeah. Now, can you describe the show? What would people see if they were to tune in?
Very laid back. It just always opens up, and with a very calm tone on what food we're making, and we try to touch on facts about the location and its origin, and maybe
history,
any other interesting historical facts. Yeah.
And it's almost the way, I guess, the feel that I guess I kind of go towards as the voice of the project is kind of like your guests in my kitchen, and while I'm cooking, we're having a conversation. That's kind of the idea behind it. That's what we strive for. And obviously we've just like beginning of this month was our first year anniversary. So we've been learning a lot and figuring things out. I'm getting more and more comfortable recording my audios and stuff.
Yeah, no, I think what you mentioned, that you are the voice of the project. For those who haven't seen it yet, obviously you got to check it out. But you actually don't appear. Your face does not appear on the camera. All you see is you see your hands and you see you talking. Like, was it the intention right from the very beginning that, I'm not going to actually fully appear on camera? You're just going to watch my hands make this stuff?
Yeah, sometimes people will see maybe the top of my head when I'm stretching over, but yeah, partially, quite frankly, I'm not that comfortable in front of a camera, but also conceptually, Oscar and I both agreed that it's about the food and it's about what the surroundings of the food, and we didn't want anything to distract from that. And honestly, it's just made it easier, I think, in some respect too, for the filming of things. I mean, mind you, now we have two cameras, and we've had for a little while now, so that made things nice to have it B-roll and stuff. But yeah, no, it was at the beginning. The main reason for me was simply lack of comfort in front of a camera.
I got you. Well, definitely works. I think it's a cool approach for sure.
Yeah.
And now, how do you guys determine what food you are going to feature on the show?
Partially. So I have the list. So, I'm sure I'm not telling you something you don't know, but there's the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie,
Sure.
OIF. And the video, really, when it comes to the channel, is to celebrate the foods and the culture around the foods and whatnot, not just of Quebec, which of course is near and dear to my heart, and New England and Canada and whatnot, but of the entirety of the Francophonie. So I downloaded the list of the 88 countries that are a part of it, and every once in a while I'll pick. A lot of it goes what I'm in the mood to make, but like we actually just today uploaded, and it's now live, an episode on St. Lucia and
Nice.
the national dish of St. Lucia. I try to bop around, to partially to gently educate that I think a lot of people, especially in North America, don't realize that there's more to the French world than parts of Europe and, of course, Quebec/Canada, and, of course, a bit in the U.S. I think we're so in our bubble is so huge in North America. I mean, you got Canada and U.S., two humongous countries that would be like, if you went to Europe, that would be like 6-7 countries.
Right. No, sure.
So I think we have such a huge bubble that we sometimes forget the variety out there. So that's part of it, is I wanted to kind of introduce people to it. But there's also the fact that this channel supports the mission of the Franco-American Center, which is about celebrating Franco-Americans. And Franco-Americans of today don't necessarily look the same, shall we say, or not necessarily made up quite exactly the same as it was in the 1950s. A huge population now of Franco-Americans are from the Congo and from Haiti and from Senegal. So I think it's important to celebrate those cultures. And frankly, the bonus is we've discovered a lot of great foods that never would have made ever. I'm loving it.
Yeah. So how often are we watching on the YouTube show you make a dish for the very first time that you've never even seen before?
I'd say about at least 75 to 80%.
Oh, really? That's
yeah.
awesome.
How would I say this? I have no trouble whatsoever being caught screwing it up.
Yeah.
Because the way I see it, if it works, fantastic. I'll be super thrilled. But if I screw it up, if I make mistakes, if it's a total flop, I think it's okay for people to see it, and B, it'll help others going, oh, she did that. I'm going to try it, but I'm going to stay away from that mistake.
Sure.
So I think there's a bit of that. And, I'm that crazy person that I'd have a dinner party and make a recipe for the first time. And if it doesn't work out, let's order pizza.
I like that. That's cool.
So no guts, no glory.
Oscar, were you familiar with any of these at all prior to deciding that you were going to get involved in a food show on YouTube? That's cool.
Well, the home stuff.
The home stuff, yeah.
Which is few and far between.
My French isn't the most advanced, so even when she's like, oh, we're going to make like scacrème, which that one I actually know now, but I would always be like, oh yeah, we've had it, but okay, sure, whatever that is. And I mean, I definitely don't consider myself a cook, and we were joking around just the other day that I could tell people exactly how to cook something, but if they asked me to help them, I would not be able to at all.
That's awesome.
Although when he visited his sister in Nova Scotia, he used a Franco Foods video to make a meal for her and her roommate.
Yeah, that's right.
No, that's awesome. So, I mean, something that's, super obvious just watching each episode is there's clearly some background research that goes into anything you guys do. Because not only are you preparing this recipe that, like we just said, you may never have tried before, but there's a cultural lesson along with it. There's often a language lesson or a history lesson. So maybe you could talk, how does the research go into, like, what does that process look like when you're getting ready to film?
So kind of give you an idea. Basically, Oscar and I both have our roles in this team up. He, like you said, he's the production. He's the behind the scenes. Anything you see that's been done on screen, that's like any kind of manipulation and recording, audio, everything, that's him. Special effects, whatever, that's him. Everything else, that's me. So the research as well. And so when I know I'm going to be working, I've decided, like, for example, St. Lucia, I take a couple of days as I'm the first research will be, especially if it's a country I don't know, is going to be, I reach out to consulates and embassies to see if there's anybody who will connect with me, which I've been lucky. Like my very first international one, which was the Senegalese episode, a lady from the Senegalese embassy in Washington, D.C. reached out and I interviewed her.
That's awesome.
I love when I can talk to someone from those countries, because then it's not just, I Googled and this is what I found. Sure. It's an actual person telling me about their experiences. So I love that. But then that's what I do. If I don't have anybody with whom to speak, I research. And the first thing I research is what's the national dish? What's the most, like, and I'm sure if anybody who's traveled has Googled, what should I do when I go to whatever? So yeah. I kind of do that. And then when I'm writing the script, which is, so we film and then Oscar gives me the raw footage, because while I follow the timeline of the video, I'll be writing my script to get an idea of where to fit stuff in. And so that's where I'll see also, okay, how much time do we have? So then I'll start researching. I know that I usually obviously want to have a language aspect, like the vocab and whatnot, but I also try to do, like you say, history or cultural information. So I just start to read up on them. Yeah, that's pretty much how that happens.
Well, and it's always such a bummer at the end of the cutting as well, because there are so many facts, and there are some cases where it's either it just doesn't mesh well with what's on screen, or we just can't find time to keep it in. So I end up cutting like a good 20% of the facts most of the time.
Which we should start using for our social media, actually.
Yeah, that's what you save for the Patreon subscribers down there. That's the bonus. That's the bonus material for them, for sure.
Yeah.
This is all really, really interesting. Actually, Oscar, from the production end, because I know there's a ton of work that goes on behind the scenes of, any type of thing. Mike does a ton of work for this podcast. Sure. What does it look like from your end? Like, how many even minutes of film are we talking about for like what turns into like a 5 or 10 minute, episode?
So it really varies. I mean, especially as I get better with editing, I mean, like there's the more footage we have, it just takes more time to edit it down to 10 minutes, because our goal is always to keep to 10 minutes. But generally, I would say that the raw footage always comes out to be anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And I mean, that's just like the round number. We did have one where it ended up being like 3 hours long.
Yeah, but that was because there were so many steps, and it took we had a lot of, especially when I make breads and stuff, right? There's a lot of wait times, and we try to we discussed it, and we prefer capturing more than not enough, because then it's easier to cut out than go, oh shoot, we should have filmed that. So,
and it's definitely a double-edged sword, because the more safe you try to be while filming, the more post-production you hate yourself for giving yourself that much work.
That reminds me every time when I used to record just via Zoom from my living room, and we could edit all this out. You see Mike's reaction when I would send him like a 90-minute interview for the podcast. He'd be thrilled for sure. Mm-hmm. But you guys have some guests recently. Yeah, so how did that come about?
Well, actually, I knew it was something that ultimately I wanted to do. My husband works for this company, and there's a gentleman there who is from northern Maine, Fort Kent, I want to say, area. And he's Acadian, on his parents' side. So he was like, oh, if ever she wants to do it, I'd love to help her out. I'll do So, okay, sure. And I mean, I'm pretty open about these things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, so that was that. And then, of course, chatting with Melody, of Modern Francos, she and I had a chat about the fact that I know that, I had looked at her website and I would start following what she was doing and her lifestyle and whatnot for Modern Francos. And I liked the fact that she does a lot of vegan and vegetarian things. And so we started talking about, let's see about coming up with a vegetarian or vegan tourtière. And so that's how that episode happened, which, funny enough, I mean, you can cut this out if you think it's not okay, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say.
I already like what's coming.
Okay. We knew that a lot of people, their noses were going to be out of joint because we were making a vegan tourtière. And the thing is, I think the tough part sometimes, and I'm guilty of that, I've been away from Quebec now. I've moved away. Well, we've been in this house. Well, my husband and I have been married for 25 years. So we've been away from Canada for 25 years.
Sure.
And when you move away someplace, it's like, when you watch a movie and you see the kid actor and the movie's 30 years old and then you see them and your brain can't process that. And I think it's the same kind of thing when you immigrate from someplace and you're gone for a long time. It's a picture in time that it still is like that. And I think the people who have been away from the Quebec and Canada for a long time, in their mind, things are still done the same way as they were in the 1950s. My family is still all in Montreal. And one of my nieces just completed a culinary arts degree. And we were talking about the food trends. And there's a huge vegetarian veganism movement in Quebec as well. And when we were talking over the holidays and everybody was saying, oh yeah, so-and-so, they're bringing a vegan tourtière or they're bringing a vegetarian version. It's been going on for years. So I think it was an important, as much as some might not have appreciated, I think it was an important thing to do to show that traditions do change. And I'm glad we did it. And I'm glad that Melody was with us. She was great. Loved having her with us. And and then the next episode that was definitely traditional was creton, or as you guys call it, Gorton. And that was the pure, real good pork.
Yeah, we're gonna touch on that for sure before this interview is over, no doubt.
But it's been a lot of fun having people with us. We're heading in a direction I think I'm really pleased about. The conversations, Oscar and I, we both agree about the direction that we want to go with the channel and what that means for guests and whatnot. So we're pretty excited about that.
Very, very cool. Yeah, obviously, that's the favorite episode of Team French Canadian Legacy. Be able to get Melody on the show. That was cool. And what you guys mentioned, because I knew you guys were going to take some flack for that, but I do agree that it is super, super, super important to be able to have people with dietary restrictions for one reason or another. Too often, I think they're told that, they're not invited to the party anymore because if they don't do things the exact same way they've always been done, then, sorry, you can't participate. But when we got, Franco-Americans trying as hard as possible to do what they can to hang on to that heritage, that culture, and to connect in ways in any way they possibly could, anything we could do to make that more accessible to people, I think is incredibly important. So I'm really glad you guys did that.
Thank you. Well, I think tradition and cultures are like anything else in the world, adapt or die.
Sure.
And I would rather change a recipe. So like even Oscar doesn't know, he's how do you say you're a bad vegetarian? Because he doesn't do his meats once in a while, but he does tend to prefer vegetarian. And so he was thrilled to have that option. I'd rather tweak things so that my kids, and maybe later on, hint, hint, my grandkids.
No pressure,
not right now, but that they will still be enjoying the essence of the tradition, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think that's very, very cool. Now, you guys have been getting some media attention, which I think is very, very fun, including New Hampshire Chronicle. For those who don't know, that's a daily show that airs here in New Hampshire and features a bunch of fun stories from across the Granite State. So how did it come about that you guys and Franco Foods was featured on New Hampshire Chronicle?
You want to take that one?
I don't even know if I have the full story.
Okay.
Because I barely even understand how you started.
Okay, so about a couple of weeks before Christmas, without telling myself or Oscar, my husband Thomas emailed WMUR and said, hey, here's what my wife and son are doing. Take a look. Here's the link. I think it's something your audience would like. And within a couple of days, it went, whoever got a WMUR gave it to New Hampshire Chronicle, and we got an email, and he goes, okay, this is what I did, and now they want to do this. And I'm like, you what?
That's awesome.
And we're still waiting on Netflix because he emailed them too.
Perfect. Oh,
but it went fast, and I was incredibly nervous because again, I had to be in front of the camera this time.
I was going to say that you're not just hiding them when you do New Hampshire Chronicle. You're in front of the camera in New Hampshire Chronicle, in front of a lot of people. So,
yeah, but they were wonderful. Both Jean and what's his name again? I'm listening. Joel, thank you. I knew it was a J. Jean and Joel, they were wonderful. They made us very comfortable. Joel, I have to say, on a proud mama moment, he was so utterly impressed with our production setup and with Oscar's knowledge and what his talent. And Gene Mackin actually emailed me to give me an update before it aired and said, yeah, they're finishing off the editing, and our lead editor is like floored by Oscar's talent. So yes, proud mama moment, very proud.
No, that's cool. And you guys went with the butter tarts for that. Now, did you guys already plan the butter tarts episode, or was that like, yeah, we're going to be on TV now, let's reach in and pull out something that we know we can do well?
No, actually, the reason I wanted to do something that was fairly traditional, Canadian-wise, Canada-wise, but also something we'd already done, because just from the emails, I knew that they were going to go pull in already existing videos. So I figured it was easier to do it that way, and, figured everybody likes butter tarts, so it's a sweet, safe bet. So that was fun. Cool. It was a lot of fun. They're super nice. And we definitely are thrilled by the exposure it's given us. And actually, Oscar works part-time here in town at the local television station. And not too long after it aired, he was at a one of the board meetings, and he heard on the hot mic that they didn't know. He goes, yeah, I think I saw him on New Hampshire Chronicle.
Very nice.
So that's
fun. Cool. And one other thing that came out of that, Big Red Bowl. We need to hear the story of the Big Red Bowl.
Oh, that's my mom's. That was my mom's bowl. That's the bowl that all the cake batters and donut batters and whatever good, sweet, delicious treat was made out of that bowl. And after Mom passed away and we emptied out the house, I kept that one and another bowl that I use for whenever I make bread. It's just one of those, I think I would just blubber out and cry if something happened to it.
And I gotta say, it was kind of surreal to see that, because they give this whole big story about the Big Red Bowl, and before then I was like, oh yeah, it's Meme's bowl, and that was it. So I mean,
yeah, it's it's just one of those things that I make my mom's cake batter recipe when I make birthday cakes. And I'm a little girl again, because it tastes the same, and because it's her recipe, and I made the kids' birthday cake, so it's kind of a way for me to stay connected with her.
That is
sappy,
very,
but,
very cool.
It is what it is.
That's awesome. I mean, that's the kind of reason a lot of us get involved in stuff like this, because we have those kind of connections. I think that's very, very cool. So as we're kind of winding up, I guess, I do need to ask a couple of important questions.
Sure.
We don't actually get to try any of this. What's been the best so far? Your favorite so far of all the stuff you made? You were like, you know what? That came out really, really good.
I will say I was very proud of, it's not necessarily my favorite, but I was very proud of the vegan tortilla because I made it up on the spot. We didn't have.
So you came up with that recipe yourself?
Yeah, we, God love her. I think Melody arrived and she brought me the gluten-free stuff, but she didn't realize, and that's my own fault too, I'm sure, because or fault being a big word, but I'm still getting used to having guests. So sure. I thought she was going to bring stuff, and she figured I had everything. So she walked in and I'm like, okay, so let's use carrots and so I'm kind of just,
oh, wow.
I just threw it all together. So
that was amazing as well, because I genuinely could not tell the difference between
really
and vegan. Yeah, because we ended up making normal tortilla like shortly after, and we still had leftovers.
Holidays, yeah.
could not tell a difference.
Yeah, so it's not my favorite, but I'm proud of that I was able to whip that up. So I'm proud of myself there. But I don't know, favorites. I really, I don't know. I know you like.
Yeah, I don't actually know your favorite because I'm always the one who's super verbal at the end of the videos. I'm like, that was so good. That was amazing. I used to say that the vol au vent was my favorite food, but
vol au vent.
Vol au vent, yeah. But saltfish was the one we just did, right?
Yeah. That's the one that's on up now. It's the St. Lucian one. Yeah, you really like that.
That one's my like top 3 right now. It is really good.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
And I enjoyed the bunya a lot. I think I love the traditional stuff, right? But I think really what gets me excited is the new stuff that I've never done before. And I discover it and I'm like, damn, this is pretty darn good. And actually, when I made the Haitian patties, one of my friends is from Colombia, and served with it was benenpez or I can't remember what they call it in Colombia, but it's the plantains, that are smashed and fried. Sure. And I called her up. I said, I've never done this before. Would you mind? So she came over to taste, and she's like, oh my gosh, that's just like my mom's.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I was like, yes.
Haitian patties was really
he really likes the Haitian patties. Yeah, we like that.
Cool.
So I think I'm liking the pasticcio. I love Greek food, and I was so excited when I found that Greece was part of the Francophone. I'm like, sweet, we get to do Greek episodes. So I did like the pasticcio a lot.
No, that's cool. Very, very nice. I just did my first entire episode in French. Any chance that we get a Franco food en français in the future?
We have discussed it. We're kind of back and forth on it because I think the bulk of our audience is not Francophone French speakers, so we don't want to lose them or get them frustrated. But I don't know. We're back and forth.
Well, I had 2 ideas. One of them was, you do French and then I just subtitle it English. Which, it takes more time or whatever, but I liked the idea of like, I wanted you to flex, basically, that you're fluent in French. Sure. But my other idea is that we kind of do like a joke episode where it's like, I think we ended up scrapping the idea.
I don't even remember this.
It was like a joke episody where you take the stereotype of being a Quebec French speaker.
Oh yes, and we decided, probably not a good idea. Too many people. Feeding the fire. Too much of a controversy there. So no, we have. But although like my niece who finished in the culinary arts, we've already planned that when she comes to visit us, we are going to be filming. And one of the things we want to do is basically, because she, in her training, she interned with some of the top chefs in Montreal. Cool. And so would be to talk about the evolving culinary scene in Montreal and in Quebec. So I'm sure there would be more French. I mean, her English is excellent, but she does have that French accent. So I'm sure we would wind up deking back and forth, I think.
That's awesome. So as you are the Franco food guys, I can't let you go without some hard-hitting Franco food-related questions that have been posed to me a number of times. Number 1, pork pie, tortilla turkey, whatever you want to call it, potatoes or no potatoes?
For me, it's no potatoes, but that's just because what I grew up with. Give me one with potatoes, I'll eat it.
Gotcha. So you're not, it's not a big deal to you either way.
No, I think I almost find it's funny to have all these arguments because
it is. It's fun.
It's like it is funny, haha, but it's also, why are we arguing? They all taste great.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things. It's again, related to your own family heritage and tradition. So celebrate it, enjoy it, and let the others do the same.
Now, did you grow up with ketchup or gravy?
I had never heard about gravy until I moved here. I remember talking with Joanne Bélanger, and she was talking about gravy. I'm like, you put gravy on that? It's like, now for us, it's good old fashioned ketchup or homemade chow chow.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it's funny for me. It was the exact opposite. I never in a million years thought you would put ketchup on. My family was torquay, is what we always call it. It was like, no, we have it for we have it on Thanksgiving. You have it on Christmas. You have it on New Year's. It always It's right next to the gravy because you have it with gravy. But yeah, no, very fun. Now, and I did mention before that we would come back and I grew up with being called gratin, but you guys call creton here. So we can't let the guys go without mentioning that episode. It's something that I've grew up with, had forever, never saw it ever spelt with the CR until I was actually at a restaurant with my sister who saw it on the menu. Was like, what is this? I'm like, I had to let her know exactly what it was. So we called it something different because I didn't know what went into it. I had zero clue what went into this dish until I saw you guys make it. So for those who grew up with gratin and like myself who had no idea what it's actually about, can you just explain what is a gratin?
It's basically a pork spread. So here's my own theory of how this started. I know there's a history behind it, but my theory is in the form that it is today, is that we know, immigrants or people, they don't, especially back in the whatever year, they didn't waste anything. And when you prepare it, you look at it, it's basically like tortilla mix, but it's like the end of it with lots of liquid. So I think that's where somebody thought, you know what, let's just add more spices and some bread to sop it up and let's see how it turns. That's my theory. But it's a pork spread. And I love it. And that's why the Melissa, who joined us, is also a colleague of Thomas's. She had brought to him a sample for me to taste. And I was like, oh my gosh, that tastes exactly like what I grew up with. So that's how she wound up being a guest. And but yeah, Oscar was like, I think he's trying to mainline the creton because the veganism does not happen. He loves it.
It is, wow, yeah.
But the big thing that I find, and which Melissa and I both talked about, the whole mustard on top, I was like, really? Nope. We just plain.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Because it's funny. I've talked about that with Matt Preventure, who grew up in Manchester. He's won back-to-back Poutine Fest, the chef Matt Preventure.
And he's going to be one of the judges at the Fleur de Lis Challenge.
Awesome guy. Very, very cool guy. And he grew up the same way as me for whatever reason. You could have all the fancy mustards in the world when it comes to gratin. Just plain yellow mustard. That's it. It was always just plain yellow mustard in the family for whatever reason.
See, I tried it and it's not bad, but for me, it masks the clove and the very light seasoning, so I prefer it plain on toast.
Gotcha.
I also eat it in like scoops.
Oh, yeah, sure, of course. It was fun to see it when I was up in Quebec. When you get like the traditional breakfast up there, it was always part of it. It was pretty neat. This has been awesome. This has been a ton of fun. So as we sign off, what is the future of Franco Foods and where can we send people who want to check out this amazing program?
If people want to watch Franco Foods, then go onto YouTube and just type in Franco Foods and we'll be the first results.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
And the future, I will say one of the plans that we have is maybe once a quarter, is to start highlighting local chefs and restaurants that are connected somehow to the Franco world. For example, our very first one, I'll give you a little glimpse, is with Alexandre Waddell of Crémeux Pastry in Merrimack. And
very cool.
Who graciously invited us in and got to speak with them. And I want to start, I've got a couple of other chefs that I've spoken with who are very game to be either us in their kitchen or they come to here. And partially, I want to learn from them stuff that I really either am not good at or don't know how, and then take what they've taught me and do it at home. So, but I want to start highlighting these partially because I think it'll be fun for people to see professionals in a casual manner. But also there's, I guess I hate to use it as an explanation, but with the pandemic, most restaurants have been very hard hit. And so if it's another way of highlighting them and giving them, helping each other out, I guess, I think it'll be fun. And so far, everybody's been super amazing. And definitely the whole Fleur de Lis challenge, the baking competition, I'm very excited about that. Because actually Alexandre Waddell and Matt Provencher both are judges. So I love that we have these two professionals that are going to be judging our amateur bakers. And I just heard this week, actually, our third judge is going to be Marie-Josée Duquette from
That's awesome.
the Délégation Québec. Yeah. So
Yeah.
pretty excited about all that. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Another former guest of the podcast.
Yes. So she's wonderful.
Well,
So.
this has been awesome. This has been really fun conversation.
Yeah,
Again,
thanks so much for inviting
Thank
us.
you.
Of course, Natalie and Oskar Hirte of the Franco Foods YouTube program. Thank you guys. This is cool.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you very much.
Now our fathers look at us and sigh with despair, to think that everything they love we simply do not share. But the spirit never dies, our culture will survive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive.
Special thanks to Josie Vachon for providing the music. You can find more about her at josievachon.com. This podcast was produced and edited by Mike Campbell. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at fclpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FCL Podcast for more information about the topics discussed. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this episode.